one of the things I always say to people is that, yeah, Microsoft give you a lot of these tools, but a lot of them are not enabled. Multi-factor authentication, for example, on email is not enabled by default. It's something that you, or what I recommend is your IT company, work to get these things set up and then put these policies in place. I'm Mark Riddell from M3 Networks. We are an IT support and cybersecurity specialist because we know that running a business is hard enough as it is, right, without IT causing more headaches and frustration, which is why we aim to make IT an enjoyable experience for our customers. If you'd like to find out more about what we do, check us out at m3networks.co.uk. Welcome to another episode of TechSess. I'm Mark Riddell, and today we're going to be talking about Office 365 backup, and we're going to be specifically talking about the shared responsibility model when it comes to your data. Now, I think it's a fair assumption to make that most people, if you ask them, they would say that they don't need to back up their Office 365 data. They assume, wrongly, that Microsoft are backing up their data. Now, there is a few things that Microsoft do to protect your data, and they do give you some restore options up to a point. However, one of the things that Microsoft actually say in their services agreement, it actually specifically says, and I'm quoting this, it says, "We recommend that you regularly back up your content and data that you store on the services or store using third-party apps and services." So basically what Microsoft are saying is, look, we recommend that you take responsibility for this yourself. And this is where the shared responsibility model comes in, which we're going to talk about just in a second. What are the things that Microsoft actually do to protect your data? Well, of course, they have redundancy and resiliency within their own infrastructure, within the data centers that, Microsoft Office and 365 and Azure services are stored. They also offer some services that you can buy from them for, particularly if you're using Microsoft Azure, you can buy other backup services for your servers and things like that. But when it comes down to the more basic Office 365 data, so your email, your OneDrive, your SharePoint data, how are you going to take responsibility for that and back that data up yourself? Now, of course, the easiest way to do it is to do it cloud to cloud. This is a service that we provide to customers here at M3. We can offer a service where we automatically back up all of your data on your 365 profile to another external provider, cloud to cloud. You don't need to think about it. There's no action to be taken. It's just a monthly service that you can buy per user for a low monthly price. So a few moments ago, I mentioned the shared responsibility model, and this is the model that Microsoft uses to show what they're responsible for and what you as the customer is responsible for. So let's talk about the differences between these two. So the primary responsibility for Microsoft and their infrastructure is the uptime of the Microsoft Office 365 services. So Microsoft are responsible for ensuring that their services are uptime of 99.999% or whatever it is that they actually quote. Your primary responsibility is your data in Office 365. So the access and control of the data that you have in Office 365. Moving on to the support and technology, Microsoft have responsibility for Office 365 data replication. So they replicate data between data center to data center to give things like geo-redundancy. So they make sure that if one of their data centers goes down, they can still recover your data. They also provide a recycle bin, which provides limited and short-term data loss recovery. So if you delete a file in SharePoint or OneDrive, you can recover that file, right? But there's no point in time recovery. You can't particularly say, I want to jump back to what that file looked like 3 months ago. You can just recover a file that's been deleted as it was as the last version. So there's no versioning of file history, okay? Your responsibility is for Office 365 backup. So a copy of your data stored in a different location. Remember, fundamentally, that's what backup is. It's a copy of data in a physically different location. And that physical location could be another cloud service, which is kind of what I've been talking about here. And then obviously full data retention. So the filing any or all kind of policy gaps and at that point in time recovery option. So, if you want to retain your data for say 7 years, then you need to have a system and a policy that allows that to happen. If you want to be able to do point in time recovery and go back like 3 months and restore a file or a folder from a particular point in time, that's on you. So when it comes to security then, Microsoft have security at the infrastructure level. So of course, the physical security and the app level security and the user admin controls is all on them. So of course, their data centers, as you'd imagine, are going to have really strong physical security to make sure no one's walking into the data centers and things. That's what they're in control of. At your responsibility level, on the data level, is to make sure that there's no accidental deletion, there's no malicious insiders, there's no employee retaliation or any evidence tampering. And things like ransomware, malware, hackers, any rogue applications, this is all at the data level, and it's all your responsibility to make sure that you have the security in place. Now, when it comes to regulations, Microsoft's role is as a data processor. So the data privacy, the regulatory controls, industry certifications. For anyone in the US, they'll be subject to things like HIPAA and Sarbanes-Oxley as, requirements to be compliant with. But for your role as the data owner, of course, you have to answer to any corporate and industry regulations. So if you're regulated by the FCA or any other industries in the UK that you might have to meet requirements from, is on you to do that. And as well as your just internal legal and any compliance that you have within your business. So one of the big things to be aware of with Microsoft and their 365 service is that they do offer a lot of tools to help keep your data safe, but it's up to you to use them and configure them properly. Now, I just want to interrupt this episode just for a few seconds, and I'm going to throw a shameless plug at you. Now, I've noticed quite recently that our YouTube channel has been getting a larger number of subscriptions. Now, it's not thousands, but certainly we're into, I think we're approaching almost 200 subscribers on YouTube now. And I think this is because we've been posting our tech update videos every single week. So we're starting to see a lot of people starting to engage on YouTube. So if you've not already checked out our YouTube channel, just go into YouTube and search for M3 Networks Limited, or just M3 Network, and you'll see the green circle with the M3 logo in it, and you'll be able to go and subscribe and see all of our tech update videos right there. Now let's get back to this week's episode. If you don't use retention policies, data loss prevention policies, or multi-factor authentication, for example, then it's your own responsibility when your data is compromised or lost. And I refer back to what I said earlier about the Microsoft Services Agreement, is that they recommend that you have a backup of all of your data that's stored in Office 365. And one of the things I always say to people is that, Microsoft give you a lot of these tools, but a lot of them are not enabled. Multi-factor authentication, for example, on email is not enabled by default. It's something that you, or what I recommend is your IT company, work to get these things set up and then put these policies in place. Turn on the features, of course, with your consultation, and make sure that you're using the tools that Microsoft give you. It's kind of like, they give you the lock, but, you have to turn the key. They don't do it for you, right? So let's spend a few minutes talking about what Microsoft actually does do when it comes to keeping your data safe. As I've said earlier, there is third-party cloud-to-cloud backup. We provide this as a service, and it's absolutely something that every Office 365 users should have in place. But what does Microsoft do to help prevent data loss? Now, I said earlier that your data is always mirrored in data centers. So they mirror in at least 2 data centers that are always located in the same region. So if you're in the UK, then of course it's always kept within the UK or the EU or the US, for example. And this way that your data is protected against things like natural disasters or another form of an outage. So if one of the data centers, went on fire and burnt down, then they can still recover your data. That is what they provide to you. The data in OneDrive and SharePoint is retained in a 2-stage recycle bin and can be restored within 93 days. And besides the recycle bin, you can also restore different versions of the file in SharePoint only, not in OneDrive. Mailbox data is retained for 30 days by default, and individual mailbox items can be restored within 14 days by default, and you can increase this to 30 days as well. And Microsoft also keeps a 14-day backup of Office 365 data, and a backup is created every 12 hours. So in case of a ransomware attack, you can ask Microsoft support to restore a backup of this data. Now keep in mind that Microsoft will perform a full restore of the mailbox or the SharePoint site, so everything else will be overwritten. So you need to be very careful that This is not something that is going to be a customization thing, in terms of a backup, and you just want to pick out certain things. They're going to do a full restore of everything. And that could also still lead to a data loss. So this isn't backup for restoring a single folder or file that someone has just deleted by accident. So this is not probably the thing that most businesses want to rely on if it comes to getting their data back in a ransomware attack situation. So it's fair to say that Microsoft Office 365 is a pretty robust system to use. Microsoft have a lot of this covered data center replication in the event of a natural disaster. They've got, some retention policies. They restore or they maintain backups for a certain amount of time. So why should you have a third-party Office 365 backup solution? It really boils down to this. It's on you, right? While Microsoft have some things in place, ultimately, restoring your data and being able to keep your business operational or restore data from a ransomware attack is entirely on you. So you need to be totally confident that you can restore your data, the data that you need when you need it, and you can confidently get all the data back. And I've covered a few of the caveats of why you might not want to use or rely on Microsoft to do this. There's only a certain amount of time, for example, to be able to restore data. Microsoft cannot restore individual files and folders. They will do a blanket restore as well. Plus, you have to contact Microsoft and rely on them to carry this out. So, when these things are that important, like your data is critical to your business, having a solution that you're confident in. And also, for me, it's all about coming back to what I said earlier, which is fundamentally a backup is ensuring that there's a copy of the data in a different location. If you're just relying on Microsoft to restore the data from within their own environment, then that is technically not what we would class as a backup, right? It's not a copy of your data in a different physical location. So having a cloud-to-cloud third-party backup solution is going to give you that peace of mind. And we're not talking about a lot of money. You're literally talking about a few pounds per user per month, just to give you that total peace of mind that you can recover your email, your OneDrive, your SharePoint data. Another thing I haven't mentioned yet is it also includes your Teams data, because Microsoft Teams data, or your chat history and everything, is actually stored within the SharePoint system as well. So you're going to be able to restore all of your data, and you can do that granular point-in-time recovery. You can restore individual files and folders. And yeah, it's just a bit of a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned when it comes to Office 365 backup. So hopefully this episode has given you a bit of an education about Office 365 and backup, and what Microsoft's responsibilities are, what your responsibilities are, and hopefully you can see why it makes sense that you should have a third-party Office 365 backup solution in place for your business. Of course, if you'd like to talk to me about this kind of service, then you can jump on a 15-minute call with me if you just head over to m3networks.co.uk/meet Mark. You can pick a 15-minute slot in my diary that suits you, and we can have a coffee and a bit of a chat about how we can get this implemented within your business. Of course, if there's anything else that you'd like to talk to me about, IT or cybersecurity concerns, then you can also use the same link. Book a call, talk to me about anything that you want. That's all I have for you today. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Techcess is an M3 Networks podcast. Find out more at m3networks.co.uk.